Let's go back in the time machine to the US after the Second World War and talk about the state of the food service industry. During that time, consumer behavior was changing. People were looking for more convenient and quick dining options. Drive-ins with car hops were all the rage, thanks to the rising popularity of car culture. And at the same time, more fast food establishments are popping up into the mainstream, like KFC, Burger King, the Dairy Queen, and Jack in the Box. So if you were running a drive-in hamburger bar in the 50s, how do you win? For Maurice and Richard McDonald, it was simple. You deliver burgers faster than anyone else. And it all started with the brothers drawing a kitchen layout on in chalk on a tennis court, depicting all the grills, the stoves, the mixers, and everything, laying it all out on a tennis court. They then had the employees go through the motions and pretend to make burgers until the DU were satisfied with the speed, and they had to rearrange them and change the layout and move things around. And the experiment led to a custom-built kitchen that allowed for a streamlined food preparation process, which eliminated wasted motion. And the results? Fresh, high-quality burgers from the grill to the counter in 30 seconds, and the birth of a $200 billion fast food company. And if you've watched The Founder, starring Michael Keaton, he did an incredible job putting this piece of history to life, and I highly suggest you check it out. But today, I want to talk about the principles that the McDonald brothers applied, and how do we apply to our repair and maintenance business, and specifically how us as service organizations can complete jobs faster, better, and cheaper to win in the marketplace. And to do that, joining us today is Symeon Gum, principal at Summit Valley Streams. Symeon, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Yassine. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. We've connected a few months ago, and not a week passes by that I don't think you would get on a call and we nerd out about lean, about continuous improvement, innovation. It's been such an enlightening. Every conversation we had, I leave smarter than I joined. And I said to myself, it wouldn't be fair to keep all of that to myself, and I gotta bring you on to the show, man.
I appreciate that, and I've enjoyed our conversations very much.
Well, so Symeon, let's dive in, and why don't you give us a little bit of a background about what you do?
Yeah, so we talked about this. We have a similar background. I started actually in the HVAC trades, got into controls engineering, and then when I was working with Honeywell some 20 years ago, that's when I first got introduced to Lean Six Sigma and the concepts around operational excellence, to be able to take operations and remove waste, to remove things that hinder or are obstacles to the creation of value for our customers. So I've been doing that for about 20 years, and then just a little while ago, I struck out on my own, and so we have Summit Value Stream.
Well, fantastic. For our audience out there, can you give us like a 10,000 foot view of how lean principle and the lean methodology fits in the context of a service company, and why is it important?
Yeah, there are 5 key principles, so it's relatively simple, easy to keep in mind, and that's one of the benefits, the attraction of using the lean principles to ultimately creating value for your customers. So whatever the business, especially in service businesses, we're providing value to our customer, but what does that value look like? So we have 5 principles. It starts with the definition and the requirements around the customer value. Then how do we make that value? How do we create that value? And that's called in Lean, it's called the value stream. And then a key principle is once we've identified the steps to creating the value, then if we can make that value, make those steps flow as uninterrupted as possible and as quickly as possible, that's always going to make our customer happier, and it's going to make our businesses more effective and efficient. And then once we figure that out, we apply the pull so that we deliver value when the customer wants it. And then finally, this concept of pursuing perfection, where we're always refining and always trying to improve our business.
And that all leads to a lean service machine, right? We can complete jobs faster, better, cheaper. And what a better outcome would we want in a highly competitive environment, and where, the economy is not looking so good, and budgets are being cut, and money is expensive, and it's hard to find labor. Getting more efficient and applying these methodologies couldn't have come at a better time. In fact, lean methodology came during the economic recession, during the depression. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it was where they had to do more with less, right?
Exactly.
And even during the recent pandemic, sometimes lean is connected to just in time. And they say, oh, well, lean caused problems because of supply chain issues during the pandemic. But, if you think about just in time is not late.
Exactly.
So the whole supply chain issue, and dealing with challenges and with interruptions to our supply chain, especially for materials in the service world where it's so critical to be able to get replacement parts on a timely basis, lean helps with all of that as well.
Awesome. So we're going to dive into the 5 principles you've mentioned, and we're trying to get not too technical, but technical enough to be able to equip our audience with a new mental model of how to look at their business and at their process and squeeze more juice out of it so they can deliver, value better than the next guy or gal. And they can win in the marketplace. So, like you said, and you've published like a few articles about it, which I love. And one of the things that resonated with me is that first principle of customer value. And it's how getting clarity over like what matters to the customer, because a lot of times we innovate and we bring in new technology and we hire people thinking that we're doing what's in the best of the customer interest, but without really understanding what is that, what's in the best of the interest of customer. How do you quantify it? How do you measure it, right? Because your definition of customer value could be very different than the customer definition of value. So defining customer value is really critical, and understanding requirements, because you may be innovating on the wrong thing. So the question to use, Symeon, is how do you uncover customer value?
Yeah, it's really, there's 2 words in there, right? Yes, there's the customer and then there's the value. So as a successful business owner, we need to understand the values that we create, but understand it from the perspective of the customer. How does the customer buy? And in a service business, sometimes that's intangible. Like, what is a smiling technician worth, right? What is a good relationship worth? And so really, voice of the customer is absolutely critical when we do that.
And when you say voice of the customer, what does that look like? Like a CSAT survey? Like, what is that?
It can be. The voice of the customer certainly is in the overall relationship that they have with us, that they have with our business. But then from a lean and operational excellence standpoint, it's also understanding the customer's relationship with that value, right? So what is the value? What does the customer require of the value, whether it's a repair or a replacement part or preventive maintenance? Maybe it's a project. What are their requirements around each of those values? Are they the same? Where can we capitalize on efficiencies and the way we deliver those values? And where do we need totally different delivery systems when we think about the people, the process, and the technology? What's necessary to be able to make our customers happy?
I love it. So let's bring in an example. Let's say we're looking to improve our preventative maintenance value stream, right? And and we need to understand, well, what constitute value for the customer in our preventative maintenance. And let's say we roll out a survey, right? A CSAT survey, and the CSAT survey that may say like, hey, how satisfied are you with the service you have received, right? What, from your experience, so what are some of the spectrum of value statements that may come up from a survey like that?
Yeah, oftentimes it has to do with good, fast, or cheap, right? So
okay,
maybe it's the speed, and they say, hey, you were late, you took too long. The preventive maintenance, I was waiting the whole time, and your technician didn't show up until it was too late. And so we get that voice of the customer, right? And
perfect.
Yeah,
so that comes into the survey. So do you stop at the survey, or is there like any follow-up? Like you do an interview? Like
it depends on the level of detail, but you do, surveys are nice because you can get a lot of information in a short period of time if they're responding to the surveys. So you have to send a lot of them out. And then you can see if there's any patterns to that. But surveys are dangerous too, because, maybe preventive maintenance and maybe an emergency repair is a good example too. When they say, well, it was late, it took too long. That's a very common feedback, right? And so we think, okay, let's get it faster. And when you talk to the customer though, and you say, well, so speed is essential, we're going to come out. What if I'm faster and I can beat my scheduled time and I can be there 2 hours early? So we could look at the survey and think, oh, it's going to be faster, so faster is better. So, I'll just, the technician finishes up a call early and immediately goes out to the next scheduled call. And now they're 2 hours earlier and expect, what's the customer going to think of that?
Right. So as a restaurant operator, if I put myself in a restaurant operator's shoes and you were talking to me and trying to understand what faster means, faster to me is, yes, coming as soon as possible, but also on time. And what on time means, I don't want you to come during lunch to fix my equipment, or I don't want you to come and fix like a piece of equipment that I use during breakfast. I don't want you to come at 9 a.m. and try to fix that piece of equipment, right?
Don't shut the grill down right before the breakfast rush, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So it's pretty speed on time.
Yeah. And so that concept of, they were late, they took too long. Yes, we want you to schedule the work as soon as possible, but that schedule is really, really important. So that's some of the nuance that will come out of actually speaking with your customers and being able to use the data that comes out of the survey as a basis, but to expand upon it.
Awesome. So to summarize, principle number 1, uncovering customer value, use voice of customer program. And one of the easiest way to apply the voice of customer program is, upon the completion of a work order, you send out a CSAT survey that has a very simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with the service that we just provided? And they score you 1 to 10, and then they leave a comment. Then out of that, you analyze those comments, and then you try to see patterns. You look for different statements and recurring statements. And from that, once you've identified these patterns, then you get on the phone or you go visit the customer and you dig deeper to really flesh it out. So let's carry on this. Let's run with this speed of service value statement, and use it for the next principle, which value is stream. A value stream. So can you tell us a little bit more about value stream and what it means?
Right. So really important when you talk about getting the, how satisfied were you with this service that we provided? So got to be careful with the general customer side. Hey, how are we doing? Right? Just submit your comments here if you like our company. There's a place for that. But when it comes to operational excellence, we need the level of detail. And so that ties in with this concept of value stream, because if we say, well, how satisfied are you with this service? The repair, And there's lots of ways to split it. Maybe it's a refrigeration repair versus the hot equipment, right? The cooking equipment. Because it takes different skills, it takes different parts. Maybe there's a different process to be able to quickly repair this equipment. So as a result, once we figured out this service, maybe we went out there to repair a freezer, right? And now when we plot the steps or document the steps that are necessary to actually create that repair, all the way from the point where our company first finds out about it to the point even where we're billing for it and they paid for it, pay for the service. All the steps involved in providing that service and being able to continue to provide that service. We can look at those steps then and determine that based upon the feedback from the voice of the customer, which steps have impact upon those requirements that they named to us.
To prepare for that, I actually have done a very quick value stream, and let me add it here to my screen.
Look at that. There you go.
There you go. So this is kind of the order to cash value stream for what you say emergency service or reactive maintenance, all the way from the service being requested to sending the bill and collecting on any unpaid invoices. So take a look, especially I like the way you have this split up into the categories and then some of the detail underneath it as well. But just looking at the light blue boxes across the top, let's go back to our example. We got voice of the customer and they said, hey, meeting the schedule and having that scheduled as soon as possible are two very important things related to the service call to repair the freezer, right? So we can look at each of these sections and say, okay, at what point, or what information comes out of the customer step that will help us to be on schedule, right, on time and early or soon, right, quick response. And so the customer needs to provide a certain amount of information. It's really important. When is your breakfast rush? And we don't want to be there during that time. Then customer service, how do they collect that information? Right. So that's the first. Look, how do we collect information that has to do with getting on time? And what does getting on time mean? And what does fast mean? Yep. Right. Is you only have one grill? And like now you can't offer the menu anymore. So you're shut down completely. So I'm following here. Makes sense. Yeah. And this is important too, Yassine. When you talk about customer service, how often have we run into this? Do they have, how robust is their collection method for that information? Is it consistent? Is it in a form that it can be easily passed on to the technicians, or does it have to be translated? Does it have to be interpreted? So we want to make that information when they collect it, almost like the technician was talking to the customer directly, right? That's the goal. We can start to see where the value comes from. The accuracy of information and the completeness of the information. We see a breakdown on that often as the information travel across or throughout the value stream, through the entire value stream. Yes, pieces. You lose pieces of it, or the interpretation of it if it's not properly documented, and it's not structured, and it's not in your it has to do a lot of times in your ERP if there is no place to add it, and and you haven't trained your customer service agents or dispatchers to properly document this information, can get lost very, very easily. And to create standards, right? Excellent standards that everyone can apply versus just trying to get the right people. And if you get the best people, they're going to do it. Yes, that's that process piece. And so that's where operational excellence and lean comes in there. So then you got the other steps, right? And you can start to apply the same thing: dispatch, technician, parts, and tech support, having the parts there at the right time. How much does that impact the schedule? That's huge, right? And then love this point that you have billing and collections there, because what happens if the customer didn't pay their last two bills? How does that impact? Absolutely, yes. If they're on hold, they're not going to get service.
Yeah. It's like they should be willing, they should be happy to pay for the value that our business is providing, the services that we're providing, right? And so look at how the throughout the value stream, the creation of value is dependent upon having the information at hand at each of the steps and being able to really kind of see the overarching process, to be able to see all the different areas and know what the billing status is at the customer service status, so that the technician doesn't get all the way out to the site and suddenly it's like, oh, I can't order parts for you because you're on credit hold.
Yes, I love that. So to summarize, once you've done the voice of customer, you want to outline the value stream. You want to map out the process and how value is delivered.
Right.
So you can identify, value add activities, non-value add activities, right? What's important, what's not important. So once you've outlined those steps, and you can go as, this is, would you say this is a little bit more simplistic value stream, and you would want to go a lot more deeper into break down each of these steps into smaller steps so that you can go deeper into the process?
Smaller steps, or possibly in terms of inputs and outputs, right? So let's go back to the customer service. You mentioned one of the inputs, absolutely, run into this all the time. How robust is the ERP? Can the ERP, does it even have a field to capture the information that's necessary? Can the technicians access the ERP, or do we have to now extract it to, an Excel spreadsheet and email it or text it to different? So, there's lots that we can do by looking at the details within each of these steps. And then always connected with that customer value. Hey, on schedule and as soon as possible. So what information is needed? How can we collect that information? We don't want to spend more time collecting the information than the value of the information to be used to do the report.
I love it. And then how do we take that into the next principle, third principle, which you said is flow?
Yeah. When we look at the value stream, once we've identified the steps that create value, in this case, all the way through even to collections and the customer paying their bill, the concept of flow, it's a lean principle that says if we can make these steps flow as uninterrupted as possible, so that there's not huge points of waiting in between steps, that the customer will be happier and our operations will be more efficient, and we'll be able to provide even a higher quality, all by making the steps flow as uninterrupted as possible. And there's a number of ways of doing that. One is obviously to remove interruptions, like travel, right? To get the technician to the job site. What if the customer is an hour away from the technician that we want to send there? But there's another technician that's half an hour away. Oh, and by the way, the appointment is in 40 minutes. Who are we going to
real life example? This is real life example.
Now, but there's so much nuance to it too. So to make this flow, what do we need to be able to see where the technician is, the one that we have assigned, the one that's only half an hour away? And then, does the technician that's half an hour away, do they have the skills necessary? Maybe they're a freezer repair, and we actually need somebody to repair the grill.
Right. Yeah.
So all these things kind of come to play. Right. It's fairly straightforward, the concept. This is why I love Lean, because the concept is simple. Make the steps flow uninterrupted.
I love it. And this is the solutioning part. This is the solution.
Yes.
This is where you start
the solution. That's correct.
I love it. And I think we have, sometimes people jump into the solution and skip the first two steps. And I think this puts it in perspective that properly understanding what the target area is by defining customer value and mapping out the details, right?
Yeah.
It's the adage, measure twice, cut once.
Yep.
And I think the measurement here is in the first two steps. So by the time you get into the flow and you apply and you start understanding, where do we stop? Where's the interruption, right? You're not working on the wrong thing.
And sometimes, exactly right, Yasin. Because if you want to remind yourself constantly, you're focused on the customer value. Sometimes we jump into flow, and we're making our business flow better. We're doing things
for us internally, or for me as a business
yeah,
owner.
yeah,
Yes.
and it destroys value for the customer, or it interferes with value for the customer. So first and foremost, always the customer starts with the customer's value, and then we look at okay, now. And by the way, those who are listening to us that have successful businesses, it's not because you're destroying customer value, right? You learned how to provide that customer value while having efficient operations and flow within your business. But it's always a balance, and the customer always comes first.
I love that. Like an example I came across is one service company wanted to get their technicians, senior technicians, better utilized. So they stopped doing ride-alongs for new technicians.
No.
They sped up the they got more utilization out of their senior techs, but their junior techs took a lot longer to train, and once they put them on the street, they were less effective. And then they realized, okay, no, we gotta do these ride-alongs because it's impacting our ability to ramp up junior technicians. So that's when we think about doing something that's good for us, but not necessarily good for the customer or the technician. And the customer always it's a versatile customer is not always necessarily or let me ask you, is the customer always the end customer, or could the customer be maybe a technician or there's an internal customer, not just the external customer?
A great
or the
question.
manufacturer?
Yep, absolutely. Well, and for that matter, we're the manufacturer's customer, right? So
Right.
There's that aspect. We could be the customer. No, that's a great point. And one of the great things about the lean principles is that it applies regardless. But I like to say, the first customer is the customer that gives us funds that we don't already have for a value that we create. So it always starts with the end customer, because if the end customer wasn't there, we probably could not afford to run our business, right?
Yes.
But when you're trying to do improvements, when you're trying to, maybe let's talk about that as the technician as the customer. So we want to make sure that the technician can get to the site on time, and that they can service the customer, our end customer's requirements, and provide them with a great, customer experience, and that the repair is done quickly and in one trip, and all these other things. So as a customer of all kinds of inputs, like replacement parts, a working truck or vehicle, the tools that they need, the skills that they need, the availability that they need, their location, the routing that they take, all of these things, they would be the customer of those inputs, so that they could service our end customer by making the repair. So depending on the problem we're trying to solve, you always want to identify the problem. That will help you to identify, who the customer is and what the value is.
The receiver of value. Yep. Makes sense. And then, fantastic. And how does that then flow, no pun intended, into the next principle, which is pull? And can you help us by defining the pull principle?
So the pull principle is really where you start to get more internal. Pull is where we're going to get the efficiencies and help our business to be more profitable. Because pull is the pull on the thing of value. So in this case, the service call, right, for a freezer or grill, whatever we're talking about. And how do we find out about that? So the concept of pull is that once we have a value stream that flows evenly, the advantage of a smooth flow with no big weights and no unexpected hurdles or delays, interruptions. Now we can forecast, right? Now we can tell, hey, how many service calls can a technician get in one day?
It's getting moving from reactive to predictive.
Yes, it helps exactly. This, by the way, as we start talking about value streams or flow and pull, data is king, right? So you need to have
Right.
that. You need to have, what does your average call take? What does a repair
Capacity
of a
planning,
grill?
workforce
That's
management.
again,
Yes.
back to the supply chain. How much inventory do we keep on hand
Makes
to
sense.
enable the flow? And if we can identify as early as possible the pull from the end customer as to when they first need this, and we have a nice dependable flow across our value stream, now I can calculate how much inventory I need to keep on hand. How many technicians
Yes.
do I need to have? And during what
Yes.
period? During the breakfast rush time, probably don't need to have as many technicians that are on
Right.
hand and ready to
Or
react.
seasonality, summer versus winter, or
Summer
yes,
versus winter, the seasonal. Yes, exactly right.
yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And this is really impactful there's a lot of impact on inventory, supply chain, availability of parts, and when do you need it, and just having it on time in the right truck with the right quantity,
Right.
with the right technician. So this is phenomenal. And then taking all of that, right, into the final principle of lean, which is pursuing perfection. So how does that all
Yeah.
come together in the final principle?
We've all heard the saying, "Don't let perfect get in the way of good," right?
Right.
So this concept of pursuing perfection, it's really the pursuit, and it's the pursuit within the journey, within the value stream. So yes, there's a broader, hey, let's as a business, as an organization, let's as a team, let's pursue perfection and improve, constantly improve. But on a per value stream basis, for each of the things, in some cases, the many things of value that we provide to our customers, what does perfection look like in the eyes of the customer for that thing? And how can we make it flow a little bit better? And how can we have better systems? And if we're going to invest in our business, what kind
Right.
of communication systems will help us with the pull so that we can see where the value lays at any given moment and what the customer's requirements are for that? So just constantly going around and what is the other side? Sharpening the saw, right?
Right.
For the different value streams. And recognizing that sometimes an improvement in one value stream may actually disrupt a different value stream. So as an overall business owner, we need to understand the balance between those.
I love that. Hey, so it's more the mindset and the culture, right?
Yeah.
Pursuing perfection has a lot to do with the mindset you instill in your team, and the culture you create that enables and like at Origo, we have one of our core values is 1% better every day.
There you go.
How can we get better every day?
Yep.
And it's
great.
pursuing. We call it pursuing excellence over perfection. But I get that pursuing perfection, not to be perfect, but because it's almost unattainable. But you're always looking for that edge. You're always looking for that improvement. It's the mindset, and it's the state of mind that it puts you in, rather than the actual outcome at the end of the day. Would you say so?
Absolutely. In that case, excellence, perfection, those are synonymous, right? That
Yes.
really it's about that mentality that we want for every member of our team, that they're always looking for that 1%. How can we do a little bit better? Sometimes there's
better.
great big changes we can make, but don't let those great big changes get in the way of hitting that 1%.
I love it. So before we wrap up, my last question to you is, what are some of the dangers, risks, or mistakes people do in your experience when they try to apply these principles? They're fairly, they're fairly simple, right, to put in place, but they're also simple to screw up. So what are some of the mistakes or advice that you would give to our audience if they were to put these things in place, or what they should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. Well, with each of the principles, there's lots of ways that we can get it wrong. right? That's part of the pursuing perfection, actually, is that when you do something wrong, learn from it, adjust, and make it a little bit better, right? But if I had to go to one, when we talk about like, well what am I seeing in these 20 years or so? A lot of times when we're working with groups of people, like you think about the service, the call to collections value stream, the number of people that are involved in forming that, and the bigger the company gets, the more people. Trying to get people together and get them to work together, efficiently, effectively, happily. The
Can be a
it can be a challenge, and it starts with that first principle. So, when you're in any group, I had a colleague one time who used to joke, it's like, it always seems to take 45 minutes. But when you get to any group, you're trying to solve a problem, make sure you understand that you're all on the same page with what customer are we talking about? Are we talking about a government customer or a retail customer or, a restaurant owner customer? Or does that make a difference? Maybe we're talking about all of them. Yep. If we're talking about all of them, that's okay, but let's make sure that we're all thinking about all of them and not one in particular. And then what is the thing of value that is in consideration? And how does that customer receive that? What is the problem? What requirement? If it's a problem and it's a problem to the customer, that means we're missing a requirement. So what is that requirement? And then to take the time, collect the data to be able to make a mindful decision. A lot of times I've seen numerous problem solving and changes, even to wholesale changes to a business. And you've got two different people and they're thinking about two different customers or two different things of value. And then in the end, you put in all this work and they conflict.
I love it, man. I can't stop listening to you. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm glad I found someone that I could nerd out about these things with. So I want to thank you, Symeon, again, man, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And sharing a goldmine of insights that I know will help our service leaders listening to this call move their business forward and in their pursuit of excellence and create more value. And if our listeners are looking to implement, say, lean principles and looking to get started with their operational excellence, and they need a little bit of help, Symeon, how can they reach you?
Easiest way, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Not many Symeon Gums out there on LinkedIn, so you'll find me.
Well, awesome. Again, thank you, Symeon, so much for your time. And I'm curious, service leaders, is operational excellence one of your priorities right now? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get the conversations going. And I'm keen to hear from you. What was your number one takeaway from our conversation today, and what help do you need in the pursuit of operational excellence? Because there's a lot of smart people out there, and I'd love, like Symeon, and I'd love to bring them on the show to share with you their insight and their hard-won best practices. That said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one. God bless.